At the grocery store, my daughter-in-law called me the maid. Then my own son and grandson laughed. Shoppers stared, but I just stood there, the weight of their words pressing down. They thought they'd broken me, but they only forged my resolve. What happened next changed everything. Like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. This is my story. The morning air usually brought a sense of quiet calm to Eleanor's small corner of the house, a rare solace before the demands of the day began. But today, something was different. Cassandra, her daughter-in-law, was already up, a full face of makeup meticulously applied, hair styled as if for a special occasion. She rarely bothered with such effort for a simple grocery run, a chore Eleanor usually handled alone. At 70, Eleanor had learned to observe the subtle shifts in the household, each one often signaling a new expectation or an unspoken command. Cassandra's sudden interest in accompanying her to Miller's Market felt less like companionship and more like a carefully orchestrated display. Just as the uneasy feeling began to settle, a small voice broke through, momentarily lifting Eleanor's spirits. "Grandma Eleanor, can we get ice cream today?" It was Leo, her 12-year-old grandson, his enthusiasm a welcome distraction. His genuine affection, though fleeting, was a small beacon in her often lonely existence, a reminder of the unconditional love she once knew. She managed a soft smile, promising him his favorite strawberry swirl. Getting into David's large SUV was always a slow, deliberate affair for Eleanor. Her arthritis, a constant companion for the past decade, made every movement a challenge, each joint protesting the effort. She carefully eased her frame into the passenger seat, wincing slightly as her knees stiffened. David, her son, usually waited with a sigh of impatience, his gaze fixed on his phone. Today was no different. He didn't offer a hand, merely watched her struggle with an almost indifferent air. As she finally settled, a hushed whisper, sharp and cutting, reached her ears from the back seat. Cassandra's voice, a barely audible hiss, was just loud enough for Eleanor to catch. "Try not to embarrass us in there, old woman." The words were like tiny shards of ice pricking her skin. She felt her cheeks flush, but years of silent endurance had taught her to swallow the indignity. She knew from bitter experience that any attempt to defend herself, any flicker of defiance, would only lead to David's siding with Cassandra, amplifying her shame. Silence, she had learned, was her only shield, however fragile. Miller's Market was bustling, a cacophony of carts and chatter. As they approached the checkout, a young cashier, probably no older than Leo, offered Eleanor a kind smile. "Good morning," she said, her voice bright and friendly, a small moment of unexpected warmth. But before Eleanor could return the greeting, Cassandra stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on the edge of the conveyor belt. Her voice, usually soft and melodious, turned cold, piercing the friendly atmosphere. "This old woman is the maid. Don't talk to her. Just scan the groceries." The cashier's smile faltered, replaced by a look of profound pity that made Eleanor's stomach churn. Then, the sound that truly shattered her composure, David's hearty laughter. It boomed through the quiet market aisle, a cruel, echoing sound that ripped through her heart. "Yeah," Leo chimed in, echoing his mother's words with a youthful innocence that only made the sting worse. "Grandma's like our servant." The cashier quickly averted her gaze, her movements becoming stiff and efficient as she scanned their items, clearly uncomfortable. Heads turned, whispers spread, and Eleanor felt the stares of other customers, their eyes burning into her, judging, pitying. In that moment, surrounded by the mundane routine of grocery shopping, Eleanor felt utterly invisible, a ghost in her own life. The heavy bags of groceries she instinctively reached for seemed to weigh more than usual, each one loaded not just with food, but with shame. This was it, she realized with a cold certainty. This was how her family saw her. Not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as a silent, servile presence, easily dismissed, easily humiliated. The drive home was a silent torture. Cassandra and David chattered cheerfully about their weekend plans, a concert, a new restaurant, their voices oblivious to Eleanor's presence. She sat in the back, the bags of groceries acting as a barrier between her and their world, the sting of their words still fresh. Their laughter and conversation, meant for each other, felt like a deliberate exclusion, a further erasure of her existence. She stared out the window, watching the familiar landscape blur past, a silent scream trapped in her chest. Once home, she moved mechanically, unpacking groceries and putting them away, her hands working on autopilot. Each jar, each bag, seemed to mock her, a symbol of her servitude. Is this the life she truly deserved? A lifetime of loving, of giving, reduced to this? Later, in the cramped solitude of her tiny room, tucked away in a corner of the house that rarely saw the sun, the humiliation replayed itself. Cassandra's sneer, the cashier's pity, the customer's stares. But most of all, David's laughter. Her son's laughter. It twisted a knife in her old heart. She thought back to the vibrant life she once led, running her successful catering business. The joy of creating, of serving, but always on her own terms. Then Cassandra had arrived, her subtle manipulations and veiled threats slowly but surely chipping away at Eleanor's independence until she found herself retired, ostensibly to enjoy her golden years, but in reality, reduced to an unpaid domestic. The walls of Eleanor's tiny bedroom seemed to press in on her, a constant physical reminder of her diminished status. This room, once a cheerful guest room, had become her sole domain after Cassandra, with a dismissive wave of her hand, declared it more appropriate for an old woman who needs less space. It was the smallest room in the house, a cramped rectangle with just enough space for a single bed, a rickety dresser, and a small, dust-covered window overlooking the back alley. The master bedroom, her former sanctuary, was now a sprawling testament to Cassandra's lavish tastes, a place of opulent fabrics and expensive furniture. Every corner of this small room whispered of loss and displacement. She walked to the dresser and stared at her reflection in the chipped mirror. The face staring back was a stranger. Sunken eyes, etched with worry, hair more gray than silver, pulled back in a severe bun. There was a weariness in her posture, a slump in her shoulders that wasn't just age, but the burden of unspoken words and suppressed dignity. She saw a maid, just as Cassandra had called her, a shadow of the woman she once was. The humiliation at Miller's Market, amplified by David's laughter, had stripped away the last vestiges of her former self-perception, leaving her feeling hollow and invisible. A wave of vivid memories washed over her. She remembered Eleanor, the vibrant, independent woman who had built Eleanor's Elegant Eats from the ground up. Her catering business had been her pride, her passion. People had lined up for her signature lemon tarts and savory quiches. She had commanded respect, her hands adept, her mind sharp, her spirit unyielding. She had been praised not just for her cooking, but for her business acumen, her ability to navigate the demanding world of events and clients. That woman, with her infectious laugh and confident stride, felt a lifetime away. Cassandra, however, had systematically, meticulously dismantled it all. It had begun subtly, with suggestions that Eleanor slow down, that she deserved a rest. Then came the help, taking over client calls, managing accounts, slowly alienating Eleanor from her loyal customer base. Eventually, the business had quietly dissolved, leaving Eleanor stranded, stripped of her purpose, and neatly ensconced as the live-in housekeeper, ostensibly for her own comfort and care. But in reality, it was a subtle form of imprisonment, where her every move was monitored, her every need managed, and her voice effectively silenced. She was isolated from her friends, her former colleagues, even her own extended family, all under the guise of being looked after. As the darkness deepened outside her window, a different kind of memory stirred within Eleanor. A secret, carefully guarded, a whisper of defiance against her current reality. Behind a stack of forgotten winter coats in her closet, obscured by years of neglect, lay a small steel safe. She moved slowly, her arthritic fingers fumbling with the heavy fabric until the cold metal box was revealed. The combination, a series of numbers that had long been ingrained in her memory, was the date Arthur, her late husband, had left her. It wasn't the day he died, but the day he walked out on her for a short, agonizing period during a crisis, only to return remorseful. It was a date that symbolized survival, resilience, and the quiet strength she had found in her darkest hours. With a soft click, the safe sprang open, revealing its hidden contents. Neatly stacked within were bank statements, investment records, and a sheaf of property deeds. As she sifted through them, a profound sense of revelation washed over her. The numbers swam before her eyes, then slowly coalesced into a staggering sum. This wasn't just a modest retirement fund. This was substantial wealth, carefully accumulated and shrewdly invested over decades, hidden from the prying eyes of her present family. And then, a document caught her eye, a partnership agreement, its formal language stark against the plainness of the other papers. It outlined an investment, a significant one made years ago. Her breath hitched as she read the name. Miller's Market, the very grocery store where she had been publicly humiliated just hours ago. She owned 40% of it. 40%. The sheer irony, the cosmic twist of fate, was almost too much to bear. She remembered meeting George Miller all those years ago. He was a struggling young entrepreneur with a dream, and she, a successful businesswoman, looking to diversify her income. She had seen the potential in his vision, the need for a quality local market. She had invested not just money, but her trust, becoming a silent partner, preferring to let him manage the day-to-day operations while she focused on her catering business. Her investment had been a quiet success, growing steadily, securely, while she remained an anonymous, powerful presence behind the scenes. In the past, she had occasionally tried to mention her savings, her properties, hoping to establish some financial independence from David and Cassandra. But each attempt had been met with a subtle yet firm pushback. Cassandra would dismiss it, saying, "Oh, mother, you don't need to worry about all that. David and I will take care of you." Or she would subtly suggest that Eleanor's money would be safer if managed by David, always hinting at the potential for scams or poor decisions. Eleanor, exhausted by the constant battles, by the sheer effort it took to simply exist without conflict, had eventually relented. She had let them believe she was dependent, fragile, financially helpless, all to keep the peace. She had sacrificed her dignity, her very self, to avoid the incessant drama and manipulation. Now, looking at the crisp documents, the clear numbers, she saw not a helpless old woman, but a smart, resourceful one. A woman who had built her own empire, however quietly, however secretly. A woman who had been underestimated, overlooked, and utterly disrespected. The maid, they had called her. The servant. A bitter, resolute smile touched her lips. Tomorrow she would make some phone calls. Tomorrow she would begin to remember who she truly was. 3 days after the grocery store humiliation, Eleanor returned from her customary morning walk, the crisp air doing little to clear the lingering bitterness. She pushed open the front door, the familiar scent of Cassandra's expensive potpourri greeting her. Laughter and the clinking of teacups drifted from the living room, indicating Cassandra had guests. Eleanor moved quietly, intending to slip into her room unnoticed, but as she passed the archway, a snippet of conversation snagged her attention, freezing her in her tracks. "Honestly, she's constantly underfoot." Cassandra's voice, laced with a theatrical sigh, wafted clearly from the living room. "I keep telling David we should just put her in a home. She'd be happier there with people her own age, wouldn't she?" Eleanor felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. She braced herself, anticipating a swift rebuttal, a defense from her son. Instead, Cassandra continued, "But David, he gets so sentimental, you know. She's my mother, he says. It's ridiculous. He just can't bring himself to do it." There was no warmth, no love in her tone, only exasperation. A new realization dawned on Eleanor. Her son, her own flesh and blood, wasn't protecting her out of love, but out of a misguided sense of obligation, a reluctance to cross Cassandra. "We're just waiting for her situation to resolve itself," Cassandra confided, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "You know, the inheritance. Not that there'll be much. I doubt the old woman has anything substantial left. Probably just scraps after all these years." The words were a casual dismissal of Eleanor's entire life, her years of hard work, her quiet resilience. A new voice, that of Cassandra's friend Sandra, chimed in. "How much longer can she even live, anyway? She's what, 70? And honestly, she looks older." Eleanor felt a gasp catch in her throat. 70? And she looked older? The comment, so callous, so utterly devoid of empathy, cut deeper than any insult about her capabilities. Cassandra sighed dramatically. Oh, she's healthier than she looks, unfortunately. She could easily live another 10 years, Sandra, imagine. 10 more years of this. There was a collective titter of laughter from the guests. I mean, yes, she's free labor, but honestly, the negatives outweigh the positives at this point. She takes up space, she makes noise, and frankly, she's just there. Eleanor leaned against the hallway wall, feeling lightheaded. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. They were talking about her as if she were a burdensome pet, an inconvenience to be managed, a problem that would resolve itself with her death. The casual cruelty of their words, the sheer indifference to her existence, was a physical blow. They weren't just waiting for her to move out. They were waiting for her to die. And David, her son, was implicitly involved in these conversations. His sentimentality, a weak excuse for his inaction, his complicity. The revelation hit her with the force of a tidal wave. This wasn't just disrespect. This was a profound betrayal of the deepest kind. That evening, the air in the dining room felt thick with unspoken resentments. Eleanor served dinner, a simple chicken and vegetable dish she had prepared meticulously, despite her churning emotions. David and Cassandra sat opposite each other, engrossed in their own world, their conversation flowing around Eleanor as if she were part of the furniture. They didn't even acknowledge her as she placed the plates before them. "This chicken is a bit dry, don't you think, darling?" Cassandra remarked, pushing a piece around her plate with her fork, not bothering to look at Eleanor. David grunted in agreement, already delving into his own food. It was a familiar pattern, a low-grade criticism that chipped away at her confidence, even though her cooking had once been celebrated. "So, the wine tasting is on Saturday," David announced, turning to Cassandra. "And I was thinking we could extend it into a fishing trip on Sunday. Leave Leo with, you know." He gestured vaguely in Eleanor's direction, not even bothering to say her name. "He loves spending time with his grandmother." The irony was suffocating. She was good enough to be a free babysitter, but not good enough to be acknowledged as a person. Then David turned his gaze directly to Eleanor, his expression one of mild annoyance. "Oh, and Mom, the painters are coming in 2 days. They need to start in your room, so you'll need to pack up all your things and move them out by then." Eleanor stared at him, bewildered. "Move them where, David?" "To the basement, of course," Cassandra interjected, her voice airy. "There's a sofa down there. It's perfectly fine for a few nights while they paint." The basement, a cold, damp space cluttered with forgotten boxes and old furniture. The sofa was a lumpy, uncomfortable relic from their college days. To be banished from her small, inadequate room, to sleep in the cold, dusty basement, felt like the final, deliberate act of dehumanization. They weren't just disrespecting her, they were actively making her existence as unpleasant and inconvenient as possible. Alone in the kitchen after clearing the table, the metallic clatter of dishes seemed to amplify the emptiness she felt. She thought of her years of love, her countless sacrifices. Were they truly love and sacrifice, or merely a desperate attempt to belong, to be valued by the people who should have cherished her most? The raw pain of the grocery store incident, combined with the casual cruelty of their living room conversation, and now the banishment to the basement, solidified something profound within her. No more. The mask of the meek, helpless old woman would finally fall. She was no longer a victim. She was Eleanor, the shrewd businesswoman, the silent partner in a thriving empire. They were waiting for her for her situation to resolve itself. But they had no idea what her situation truly was. Tomorrow the phone calls would not just be about remembering who she was, but about taking decisive action. She would stop hiding her true financial power. She would reclaim her identity, her dignity, and her life. The following morning, Eleanor rose before dawn, a sense of purposeful energy humming beneath her skin. The chill of the basement couch had done little to deter her, serving instead as a grim reminder of the choices she had to make. She dressed carefully, not in her usual drab clothes, but in a simple, elegant blouse and tailored trousers she hadn't worn in years. With a new clarity of purpose, she left the house before anyone else stirred, heading directly for Miller's Market. As she walked through the aisles, the familiar sights and sounds of the bustling store no longer evoked shame but a quiet sense of ownership and pride. The fluorescent lights glinted off the polished floors, the vibrant colors of fresh produce called out, and the aroma of freshly baked bread filled the air. This was hers, a part of her legacy, a testament to her intelligence and foresight. The cashier who had witnessed her humiliation a few days prior was nowhere to be seen. A small mercy. Eleanor found George Miller in his office, immersed in paperwork. George, a kind-faced man in his late 50s, looked up, a surprised but welcoming smile spreading across his face. "Eleanor, to what do I owe the pleasure of a surprise visit?" "George," she began, her voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. "I've been doing some thinking. I want to take a more active role in the market's operations." George's eyes widened, then lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "Eleanor, that's wonderful news. I was just about to approach you, actually. With my retirement nearing, I've been hoping you might consider it. I always knew you had a sharp business mind." He pulled up a chair for her, his excitement palpable. They spent the next hour discussing everything from staffing issues and customer service training to inventory management and potential expansion plans. Eleanor proposed the idea of a dedicated customer service training program for all employees, emphasizing politeness and respect. She even suggested a small office space for herself, a place where she could work without drawing undue attention, yet still be present. George eagerly agreed to all her suggestions, clearly delighted to have her more involved. He had always respected her business acumen, even when she remained a silent partner. As their conversation wound down, Eleanor paused. "George, I have another matter. I need to find a good estate planning attorney. Someone discreet, professional, someone who won't judge." George nodded thoughtfully. "I know just the person. Olivia Hayes. She handled my parents' estate, and she's excellent. Very discreet, completely non-judgmental, and sharp as a tack. Her office is just a few blocks from here." He jotted down the name and address for her. Eleanor thanked him, a sense of quiet triumph beginning to bloom within her. The pieces were starting to fall into place. An hour later, Eleanor found herself in Olivia Hayes's elegant, understated office. Olivia was a poised woman with intelligent eyes and a calm, reassuring demeanor. Eleanor surprisingly found it easy to confide in her, detailing the systematic dismantling of her business, the constant degradation, the recent humiliation, and the truly appalling conversations she had overheard about her situation. Olivia listened patiently, her expression unwavering. When Eleanor finished, Olivia leaned forward slightly. "Eleanor, what you've described is a clear case of financial abuse, intertwined with emotional and psychological manipulation. It's a sad reality that it often comes from those closest to us." Eleanor felt a wave of validation wash over her. It wasn't just in her head. Someone else saw it for what it was. "I want to change my will," Eleanor stated, her voice firm. "I want David removed from it entirely. And for Leo, I want to set up a conditional trust. One that ensures he's protected, that he receives an education and opportunities, but only when he's mature enough to appreciate it, and if he demonstrates respect and kindness towards others. She wouldn't punish Leo for his parents' sins, but she wouldn't enable a repeat of their behavior either. Furthermore," Eleanor continued, "I want to significantly increase my charitable giving. There are many causes I care deeply about, and I want to explore new options for my business interests, perhaps even divesting some to establish a foundation." She was building a new legacy, one defined by her values, not by her abusers. Olivia nodded, making careful notes. "All of this is entirely within your rights, Eleanor. We can structure the trust for Leo in a way that provides for him while protecting your wishes. As for confidentiality, everything discussed here is strictly privileged. You don't have to fear repercussions for protecting yourself and your assets." Olivia's words were like a balm, soothing the raw edges of Eleanor's long-held fears. "Don't let fear prevent you from doing what's right for you, Eleanor. You have choices." Leaving Olivia Hayes' office, Eleanor felt an unprecedented lightness. The weight of years of resentment and suppressed anger had lifted, replaced by a surge of empowerment. She had choices. She wasn't just a victim. She was a woman with significant resources, a sharp mind, and a renewed will to live her life on her own terms. Back at the house, the front door barely closed behind her when Cassandra's voice cut through the quiet. "And just where have you been, Mother? You were gone all morning." Cassandra's eyes narrowed, scrutinizing Eleanor's composed demeanor. "You haven't been out running around, have you? What personal business could you possibly have?" There was a hint of suspicion, a subtle probing for information. Eleanor met Cassandra's gaze, her own eyes clear and unwavering. "I had personal business to attend to, Cassandra. That's all you need to know." Her voice was calm, firm, devoid of the usual submissiveness. The new resolve in her tone, the quiet confidence in her posture, seemed to momentarily puzzle Cassandra, who looked at her with an uncharacteristic flicker of uncertainty. Eleanor simply walked past her, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. The game had begun. The tension has been building, hasn't it? If you're as gripped by Eleanor's journey as I am, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story of strength, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the rest of Eleanor's powerful journey. What happens next will truly shock you. 2 weeks drifted by, each day a quiet affirmation of Eleanor's renewed resolve. She continued her duties, serving breakfast, tidying the house, enduring the casual critiques, but now a profound detachment shielded her. She observed David and Cassandra as if they were characters in a play, their self-absorption, their thinly veiled contempt, their careless dismissals, each action reinforcing the righteousness of her chosen path. The small office at Miller's Market, her clandestine meetings with Olivia Hayes, and the burgeoning confidence in her own decisions had transformed her from within. On the morning of the long-awaited reveal, the air in the house felt deceptively normal. Eleanor, a serene calm settling over her, prepared and served breakfast, placing plates of eggs and toast before her family. David scrolled through his phone, occasionally grunting a response to Cassandra's chatter about a new salon. Leo, engrossed in a video game on his tablet, munched on his cereal. They were completely oblivious, utterly unprepared for the seismic shift about to occur beneath their feet. At precisely 10 a.m., a soft knock echoed at the front door. Eleanor, without a word, rose and answered it. Standing on her doorstep were Olivia Hayes, elegant and composed, and a younger man, equally formal, whom Eleanor recognized as Daniel Miller, George Miller's son and the family's business transfer attorney. They carried thick portfolios, their presence radiating an air of undeniable authority. Cassandra, still on the sofa, looked up, annoyance clouding her features. "Who is this, Mother? Do you have an appointment? This isn't a good time." She sounded as if Eleanor had dared to invite door-to-door salesmen. Eleanor, her voice steady and clear, introduced them. "These are my attorneys, Cassandra, Olivia Hayes and Daniel Miller." She took a thick, heavy envelope from Olivia, its weight a tangible representation of decades of careful planning, of quiet sacrifice, and now of profound liberation. David, sensing the unusual gravity of the situation, slowly emerged from the kitchen, wiping his mouth with a napkin. He looked confused by the formal gathering, the uncharacteristic silence, and his mother's unnerving composure. He sank onto the sofa beside Cassandra, his posture reflecting a growing unease. Eleanor remained standing, her gaze sweeping over their faces, seeing the lingering arrogance, the assumed superiority. "It's time," she began, her voice carrying a quiet authority they had never heard before, "for you to know the truth about our family's financial situation. The truth about me." She recounted the grocery store incident, Cassandra's cutting words, David's booming laughter, Leo's echoing childish taunt. Then, her voice unwavering, she spoke of the overheard conversation in the living room, the casual discussion of putting her in a home, of waiting for her inheritance situation to resolve itself, of her being free labor, and of their shared hope that she would live another 10 years. The color drained from Cassandra's face, a flicker of fear replacing her usual disdain. David shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. With a deliberate movement, Eleanor opened the heavy envelope. She pulled out the first document, its crisp pages rustling softly in the quiet room. "The first truth," she announced, her voice resonating with unwavering conviction, "is that I've removed both of you, David and Cassandra, from my will." David's face went chalk white, his mouth falling slightly open. Cassandra gasped, a sound of shock and outrage. Leo, Eleanor continued, her gaze softening for a moment as she thought of her grandson, will receive a substantial conditional trust managed by a third party. It will ensure his education and well-being, provided he demonstrates a commitment to learning and embodies values of kindness and respect. The rest of my assets, she concluded, her voice firm once more, will go to various charities that are close to my heart. David's earlier confusion was replaced by dawning horror. Cassandra, speechless, could only stare. Then Daniel Miller stepped forward, holding his own portfolio. Eleanor has also authorized me to inform you, he began, his voice professional and direct, that she is the silent partner who owns 40% of Miller's market. A collective gasp. Furthermore, she holds controlling interests in 3 other independent grocery stores within the region. Cassandra's eyes widened, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. David's hands clenched into fists, his face a mask of disbelief. In addition, Daniel continued, unperturbed, Eleanor owns 4 separate rental properties, all fully managed by a highly successful property management company she established herself. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. David and Cassandra sat stunned, their world collapsing around them. Finally, Olivia Hayes stepped forward, her voice calm but authoritative. Based on a conservative estimate of all her assets, real estate, business interests, investment portfolios, Eleanor's combined net worth is approximately $47 million. The number hung in the air, a staggering, incomprehensible sum that echoed in the shocked silence. Eleanor stepped forward, her gaze piercing. I built that, she asserted, her voice filled with a lifetime of defiance. Piece by piece, year after year, while you treated me like hired help, while you waited for me to die. David, finding his voice, croaked, Why? Why didn't you tell us? Why did you hide it? Eleanor met his pleading gaze, her eyes cold and resolute. Because, David, she replied, you would have treated me differently because of my money, not because I'm a human being, not because I'm your mother. Olivia Hayes delivered the final, devastating blow. And one more thing. Records show that Eleanor purchased this house 5 years ago under a discreet holding company to ensure her continued residence. The current occupants, David and Cassandra, are hereby given 30 days to vacate the premises. She placed a formal notice on the coffee table. Their devastation was complete, a hollow, echoing silence filling the room as their faces twisted in a mixture of disbelief, horror, and impotent rage. Eleanor gathered her documents, a sense of profound lightness settling over her. The heavy burden of their contempt, the weight of her hidden life, had finally been shed. David, tears welling in his eyes, stumbled to his feet. Mom, please, we can work this out. We're family. Eleanor looked at him, her heart aching for the son she once knew, but resolute in her decision. I'm 70 years old, David, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. I don't have time left to wait for you to learn how to love me properly. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving them in the ruins of their illusions. 6 months later, the Tuscan sun warmed Eleanor's face as she sat on the expansive terrace of her Italian villa, a delicate ceramic cup of espresso in her hand. Below, rolling vineyards stretched towards a distant, hazy horizon. The air was fragrant with jasmine and olive trees, a symphony of cicadas providing a tranquil backdrop. Maria, her kind, efficient house manager, bustled nearby, a gentle hum of Italian conversation drifting from the kitchen. This was a world away from the cramped room and the cold basement couch, a testament to a life finally reclaimed. The thorough audit by Olivia Hayes and Daniel Millionaire had concluded, confirming her wealth to be just over $50 million. The liquidation of certain assets had been swift and efficient. Her beloved grocery stores, including Miller's Market, were sold to the dedicated employees who had helped build them, ensuring their livelihoods and fostering a sense of community ownership. Her rental properties were restructured to provide affordable housing, managed by a nonprofit dedicated to ethical landlording. Eleanor, truly free and financially independent, was finally living her long-deferred dream of seeing the world, starting with the breathtaking beauty of Italy. Maria approached, a sleek smartphone in her hand. Signora, il telefono. It was Leo, her grandson, now 13. Their weekly calls had become a fragile bridge, slowly evolving from his initial anger and confusion to a hesitant understanding. Eleanor knew he was still navigating the fallout of his parents' sudden eviction and her unexpected revelation. "Hi, Grandma." Leo's voice, still with a boyish crack, came through the line. "Mom and Dad are getting a divorce. Mom moved out last week." Eleanor wasn't surprised. The foundation of David and Cassandra's relationship, built on shared entitlement and disdain for Eleanor, had cracked under the pressure of financial ruin and exposed deceit. Without Eleanor to blame, without her hidden wealth to anticipate, their alliance had crumbled. "I think Dad misses you," Leo added, a note of youthful honesty in his voice. "He keeps saying how much easier things were when you were here." Then a moment of profound insight from the boy. "But I think he's only sorry because he found out about your money, Grandma, not because he actually missed you." Eleanor's throat tightened. Leo was truly seeing through the facade, understanding the transactional nature of his father's regret. "Grandma," Leo continued, his voice softer, "I'm really sorry for what I said at the grocery store. About you being a servant, I didn't know. I was just repeating what Mom said. I'm really, truly sorry." A genuine apology. It was the first time he had fully acknowledged his part in her humiliation. Eleanor closed her eyes, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. It was a small but significant step towards healing, towards a true connection. "Thank you for that, Leo," Eleanor said, her voice a little choked. "It means a lot. When you're a bit older, and if you truly come for the right reasons, you're always welcome to visit me here." She wanted him to understand that love and respect couldn't be bought, and that his future would be built on his own character, not on the expectations of an inheritance. David had called numerous times in the preceding months, his messages a desperate mix of apologies, pleas, and thinly veiled attempts to reconcile in the hope of accessing her wealth. Eleanor had refused every single call. His repentance, she knew, was purely needs-based, not heart-based. Some bridges, she understood now, were not meant to be rebuilt. Maria returned with the day's mail, a small stack of envelopes. Among them, a familiar, spidery handwriting. Cassandra. Eleanor recognized the expensive stationery and the distinctive scent of her preferred perfume. The letter, predictably, was a chaotic blend of threats of legal action and tearful pleas for forgiveness, interspersed with bitter accusations. Eleanor read a few lines, a faint, sad smile on her lips. It was exactly what she expected. She walked inside to the grand fireplace, a focal point of the villa's elegant living room. Without hesitation, she held the letter to the small, flickering flame. The paper caught, curling at the edges, the words turning to ash. As Cassandra's last attempt at manipulation dissolved into smoke, Eleanor felt a final, complete release. Later that afternoon, Eleanor strolled through the bustling village market. She greeted Signora Rossi, the cheese vendor, with a warm smile, exchanging pleasantries about the local produce. Marco, the baker, handed her a freshly baked focaccia, his eyes twinkling as they joked about the merits of local olive oil. Here, she was simply Eleanor, a respected resident, connecting with people who saw her, truly saw her, without hidden agendas, without judgment. These were the genuine connections she had craved, free from the toxic environment she had endured for so long. That evening, as the sun dipped below the rolling hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Eleanor made a call to her financial advisor. "I want to establish 3 new charitable foundations," she explained, her voice strong and clear. "One for elder neglect and abuse, to help those who can't speak for themselves. Another for single mothers, to provide them with the resources and support they need to thrive. And a third to offer guidance and escape routes for individuals trapped in toxic family situations." Her legacy would be one of compassion, empowerment, and justice. She raised her glass, filled with local Chianti, towards the setting sun. "To second chances," she whispered, a radiant smile on her face. "To radical self-choice. Into a new life, finally beginning at 70, 148 words.